feel like I haven't told the story in full for a while now, because it's been almost 5 months. Most of the people that are nearest and dearest to me have seen me since Violet was born, and I've told all of them the story. But I've never recorded it in full, and I want to be able to do that, to not only like look back for me years from now, I might forget little details, but also to share it so that other women who have also walked this path or are walking this path feel a little bit less alone. So this is the story of how my second daughter, Violet, was stillborn at 42 weeks. It was a non-complicated pregnancy. We found out on August 31st, 2024, that we were pregnant, and we'd been trying for close to a year. So it was a long time coming. We'd also talked a long time. We already had a little girl, Alice, who was 3.5 when we found out that we were pregnant, and we were so excited to add another one to our family, because it felt like we'd been talking about it for such a long time, and we just wanted to wait for the right time to do it, because postpartum with Alice was really hard, and I wanted to get to a point where Alice was maybe a little bit more independent, so that I could just fully submerge myself in that newborn bubble, because I didn't the first time, and just wanted to give myself time to do that. So when we were finally pregnant, we were so excited, me, my entire family. I was, of course, nervous to start. I usually am nervous at the start of a pregnancy because, in those early weeks, the risk of loss is at its highest. But the further I got along, the more comfortable I felt. So, met with my doctor at 6 weeks. We ran all the tests. We had a dating scan at 7 weeks. Everything looked absolutely perfect. The ultrasound tech confirmed that, gestation was right around when my last period was. It was likely I ovulated a few days before I thought I had. But that was good, and she had a nice strong heartbeat. I mean, at that point she was just a blip. Didn't know if she was a boy or a girl, so yeah, but she was just this beautiful little blip. And that was when it really started to feel real, that we were going to be bringing another baby home, that my little girl Alice was finally going to be a big sister, which I was so excited for. Watched all the beautiful videos of like elder siblings meeting their baby siblings for the first time, and I was so excited to see how Alice was going to be, because she loves babies. So yeah, I was low risk. I went through my local hospital, and because I was low risk, I chose to go through a group practice. I've always been a person that I don't like a lot of interventions when I deliver. I like to try and do it as naturally as possible. I absolutely hate the idea of a C-section, like that's just me. So I wanted to take that path, but because I'd had a retained placenta with Alice, I knew I wanted to deliver in the hospital just in case it happened again. Because with Alice I had the retained placenta, and I had to stay in the hospital for 3 days after I delivered, so I just wanted that there as a safeguard just in case. But yeah, I met my midwife Jodine at 16 weeks. So when you're with a group practice in Australia, you're assigned a midwife who follows you for the duration of your pregnancy. She's there for all of your appointments. She's there when you deliver, hopefully. So yeah, I met Jodine, and she was amazing. Her and I clicked immediately. We had identical beliefs with regards to birth and with regards to pregnancy and postpartum and all that kind of stuff, and we were both so excited to meet this baby. At that stage, we already knew that we were having another girl, but we still hadn't settled on a name. My husband and I, we never discussed other girl names because we were silently hoping for a boy, and we just feared that that was going to happen, but it didn't. And like, that's okay. I got really excited to have another girl. I started going through all of Alice's old baby things and started looking at all the beautiful little outfits that we were going to get to use again. Yeah, so Jodine followed me for my pregnancy, low risk, so I only had appointments every few weeks until I was, I think, 30. Yeah, from 38, you go to every fortnight and then every week. But every appointment, everything was perfect. We had our morphology scan at 20 weeks and Violet was absolutely perfect. She was significantly, like, Alice was so stubborn for her morphology scan. I can remember, like, I had to get up and, move around because Alice just wasn't budging for her morphology scan, but Violet was just very happy to, like, move into the optimal position, and we got everything in that one appointment, which was amazing. Yeah, so around 32 weeks, Jodine had been hit with a bit of a curveball. She needed to move group practices, and I really wanted to follow her, but she had to go to this other group practice, and I couldn't deliver at the hospital where she was going because of my previous history. So I moved on to a new midwife called Emma, and again, she was absolutely phenomenal. We clicked again immediately. We had identical beliefs about birth, and she was very on board with our birth plan because we talked about it in length. Me and Jodine, every appointment, we revisited the birth plan, and yeah. So I was slightly expecting to go over with Violet. I delivered Alice at 42 weeks and 2 days, and she was perfect. My placenta was fine with the exception of it being retained, but that just happens. It's not really related to 42 weeks. So I didn't have any concerns about going that length again, and I was hoping that if I was more relaxed about it, that I would go into labor a little bit earlier. So I was like, yeah, we're having this baby at 40, 41 at the most. 41 weeks roll around, and there's still no signs, and I'm doing everything to try and start labor. Meanwhile, everyone else is just on edge. They're all like waiting by the phones for the call that I'm in labor or I've had the baby. Every phone call I make, I've got to start with, no, I haven't had the baby yet. So everyone was like super impatient, me included. I was so done with being pregnant. So then on the Saturday, I was 41 and 6. And because I'd had my appointment with Emma at 41 and 3. So with the group practice, if you go past 40 weeks, you have an appointment at 40 weeks. Then if you get to 41, you go to the hospital for CTG monitoring. They make sure that Bubs is moving okay and that the heart rate's nice and strong. And they also do an ultrasound to check on the placenta and check on your fluid levels. At 41 and 3, everything looked perfect. The placenta looked really good. My fluid levels were well within the normal range, and she had a really strong heartbeat, and she was moving quite regularly. So I had no concerns at that point. We'd had a textbook perfect pregnancy, and I was fully expecting that I was going to be bringing my baby home in a few days. So yeah, 41 and 6, Emma gave me a call because I was booked in to go into the hospital. So at 42 weeks, you go in again for another CTG monitoring. They run all their tests to make sure everything's okay. And Emma and I agreed that if everything looked favourable, we would induce that day, because I said I'm just done. I know that my body's doing stuff, because I was having like consistent cramps for that whole week, and Emma did a cervical check at my last appointment and I was already at 2 centimeters. So we were pretty optimistic that if we broke my waters, it would bring on labor quite quickly and I'd have a baby that day. So that last Saturday, I caught up with my mum and my dad and my brother and my sister-in-law when we took Alice out to the park. It was like a day of beautiful sunshine. We'd had like weeks and weeks of rain. So we finally had the sun out and we could get Alice out and have a play. And, you know, I had made the phone call there with Emma and told my family, yep, hopefully we're having a baby tomorrow. Because, you know, if everything looks good, we're just going to induce because I'm done. So I tried to get a decent amount of rest that night, as well as you can at 42 weeks, because I knew that I was very likely going to be delivering that day. I was mentally prepared to go in and have a baby. So I woke up that morning. Alice got up quite early. She was up at 6:30. So I decided to make her some toast, stick on the TV and try and get a little bit more sleep. I just left the door open in case she needed me. But I said, yeah, Mummy just needs a little bit more sleep because I'm probably going to be having baby Violet today. So I decided to go back to sleep and get a little bit more rest, just in case it was a long labor. It was a long labor with Alice. I was in labor for about 31 hours with her, and I went into labor all by myself. So I was hoping it wouldn't be as long with Violet, but I was still expecting a long one, like half a day or a day or something like that. So yeah, I ended up getting up about 9. I got up and I made myself some breakfast and I just sat and chilled with Alice. I tried to relish that morning because I knew that, like, when, you know, at the end of the day I would hopefully have a baby and she would be a big sister and she wouldn't be my only child anymore. So I sat down for about 45 minutes and then I started to get all our stuff ready in the car. We'd agreed that I was going to go in by myself first because if it wasn't looking favourable, I only wanted to induce if I was sure it was, you know, going to kickstart things. So I said, look, I said to Brody, my husband, and my mum, if I get the go ahead, I'll give you guys a call to come to the hospital. And then we can have a baby because my mum was going to take Alice and Brody obviously was going to stay with me. So I went to the hospital by myself, which I keep looking back now and I keep thinking about how I could have done it differently, but I know I can't change it. So I'd been having consistent cramps most of the morning, but I wasn't convinced they were contractions because they weren't super strong. It just felt like very mild period cramps. But on the way into the hospital, my contractions definitely started getting more intense. I wasn't in an immense amount of pain, but I was able to tolerate it, but I could tell they were definitely getting more. So that started at about, I left my house at 10:15 and my contractions vamped up about 10:30, like literally 15 minutes after. Got to the hospital, and I just messaged my midwife. I messaged Emma to say, look, I'm just in the waiting room, just come grab me when you're ready. She'd already told me that, yeah, she'd been with a woman who'd been laboring, so like she was just probably going to be a little bit late, and I was like, that's totally fine, like stay with that mum, you know, and just come get me when you're ready. So by the time she came to get me, it was 11:30, and my contractions had been consistent for an hour, and I was convinced at that point that I was going into labor. It felt exactly the same as with Alice. I just had consistent contractions that, you know, I'd have a few minutes in between and then it would vamp right back up again. So yeah, Emma came to get me then, and I just turned to her and said, we're having a baby today. I've had contractions for an hour now. And she said, that's really good. First of all, I just want to get you, I just want to do our checks. Just make sure everything's okay. At the moment, the room that you wanted to deliver in, it's occupied. So we'll just get you in a different room for right now. And once it's free, because I really wanted to do a water birth. I didn't get to do one with Alice. So I was very insistent this time that I have a room with a bath so that I could do a water birth with Violet. I thought that was going to be a really beautiful experience and a beautiful way to welcome her into the world. So the midwife took me into just an ordinary room, and I'm never going to forget the room number. It was BC9. I'm never going to forget that room. At that point, I still had no indication that anything was wrong. My contractions were coming in consistent. I didn't have any bleeding. So I had no indication that anything was wrong. And Violet was never super active in the mornings. That's one thing that I constantly second guess about myself was, you know, I remind myself I was aware of her movements, but like, yeah, we'll get into that later. So yeah, so my midwife, yeah, she got me up on a bed and initially said we're just going to do the CTG first. She started to set up the straps with the monitoring equipment, and she couldn't find Violet's heartbeat. And I didn't worry. I don't know if that's normal or not. I don't know if I was in denial. I don't know if I was just trying to protect myself. There had been that many times where Violet had been sitting in a stubborn position when it came to a CTG or even the Doppler. And I just tried to reassure myself she's just sitting in a stubborn position. So Emma said, look, we need to do an ultrasound anyway, just to check your fluid levels and stuff. So I'm going to go grab a doctor and she's going to come back with an ultrasound and we'll check on how Violet's doing. So I was in the room by myself for, I thought we were going to be waiting a while because every time it was, to go get a doctor and an ultrasound, it was like 45 minutes to an hour. So I figured it would take a while. But the doctor came back into the room fairly quickly. It felt like an age, but it would have been fairly quickly. So the doctor came in and brought over the ultrasound machine. And the last thing I said to her was, just tell me my kid's being stubborn. Because that's what she was. Violet was stubborn, like her sister. And I was looking at the ultrasound and nothing was moving. And the doctor just grabs my hand and turns to me and says, I'm so sorry, there's no heartbeat. Like everything just... You hear about it from other parents and other people sharing their stories, but I don't think you can really contemplate how devastating it is to hear that line until it's said to you. I was so convinced I was bringing my baby home that day, and now I was going to be delivering a dead one. So the doctor said that and I just started screaming hysterically. I just started screaming, no, 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 no. And in the meantime, my brain is just saying to me, we can just deliver her and she'll be fine. We're already in labor. We can just deliver her and she'll be okay. And I knew that was, your brain does some really crazy things during moments of trauma to protect itself. But I just knew, like, the doctor and Emma were both incredibly silent. They didn't say anything because there was nothing that we could do. So, it felt like I was screaming for hours. I can't remember what I asked next, but I knew that I needed to call my mum and Brody, but I couldn't say it over the phone. I didn't want to tell them what had happened yet. I didn't want them to rush and worry because I knew they were going to be worried about me. So Emma very kindly offered to call, and I said, no, if you call, they're going to know something's wrong, and I don't want them to think anything's wrong right now. I just want to call them and tell them to get to the hospital. So I just practiced the line. I said, can you just get to the hospital as soon as you can? And I masked that calmness. So I called Brody first and I said, can you just get to the hospital as soon as you can? And when you come, you need to just come straight up to Birth Suite, please, and bring Alice with you. Because originally Mum and Brody were just going to meet in the car park and just hand Alice over. But I said to him, no, you need to come up to the birthing suite with Alice. And he was just like, is everything okay? Like, what's wrong? And I said, can you just get to the hospital as soon as you can, please? And he said, should I bring the food? I said, yeah, just bring whatever. I've already got the labour bag here and the pram and stuff. You just need to grab the esky with the food and then just come to the hospital, please. And Alice's backpack. And then I called my mum and I said the same line to her. Can you just get to the hospital as soon as you can? And just come straight up to the birth suite, please. And she just repeated, is everything okay? And I said, can you just get here as soon as you can? So I'd hoped that they didn't start to suspect what had happened. Because I didn't want them to worry. So my mum got there first. My mum is slightly closer to the hospital, and obviously just needed to grab a bag and run. Like, Brody needed to pack a car with stuff. Yeah, so my mum got there first, and I told her, and we both broke down. She called my dad. She tried to call my brother, and he didn't pick up. And I said, look, just keep trying to get a hold of him and let him know what's happened. And then Brody got there a little bit after my mum with Alice. Mum took Alice out of the room immediately. And I just told Brody, I said, I couldn't even bring myself to say she's dead. All I could say was, she doesn't have a heartbeat. She doesn't have a heartbeat. So that was probably, yeah. I did a lot of hard things that day. And that would definitely be one of the hardest, because I've been told bad news before, but I've never been the person to tell bad news before. That I'm the person this has happened to. I need to call someone and tell them. And I absolutely hate receiving that news over the phone, but I knew practicality-wise a lot of people were likely going to find out that way. So I talked with Emma about our birthing options. I still wanted a natural delivery. I still wanted a vaginal delivery. I asked, is labor just going to continue? And she said, yep, once your body starts, it's very difficult to stop. So your body's just going to take over at this point and do most of the work for you. And I was really grateful for that. I did ask her about pain relief. I thought, if it's going to be a long labor, I can't handle that. So I did ask about an epidural. And Emma explained the process, but she said if I had an epidural, I wouldn't be able to deliver in the bath, and that was really important. I still really wanted that water birth. So yeah, as just said, we'll just see how we go. After that, I told Alice, my 4-year-old daughter, that her little sister had died, and she didn't feel sad at first. She could see all of us were sad, but she didn't know to feel sad, because she'd only had experience with one other death, which was my grandfather the previous year, and that would have been like a blip for her. But this was going to be huge. She was going to remember this. I knew it. And I just said to her, honey, your sister's died. I still have to get her out of my body, and you're going to go stay with Nanny and Pop. So yeah, she didn't understand straight away, but she could see we were all sad. She understands now, somewhat. She understands her sister's dead and that she's never coming back. She understands the permanence of it. Yeah. So getting back to like delivering, yeah, Emma checked me, checked my cervix, and said I was only 2 centimeters still, which was a little bit frustrating, because at that point I've been having contractions for a few hours. And she said, look, I think if we break your waters, that's going to speed things up immensely, and hopefully it'll mean we don't need pain relief. And I said, okay, let's just give that a go. I had a little bit of trauma with getting my waters broken, because I had to have my waters broken with Alice. And so the doctor, I remember it hurting, the waters breaking. And I mentioned that to Em, and she said, look, it shouldn't hurt at all. It should feel about as uncomfortable as a cervical check, okay? So I trusted her. So Mum took Alice, and Emma broke my waters in that room. And yeah, there was no pain. I was just crying and just said through my tears, thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you for not adding another level of trauma to this. And then we moved to the birthing room that I was going to deliver in. It had a bath and it had fairy lights. I'd set up some music. I had a Spotify playlist ready to go. So I was on the fence if I wanted to play my music, but I knew that having this music play was going to help me feel whatever feelings I needed to feel and not bottle it up. It was going to be hard. It was going to be like, childbirth is difficult under any circumstances. I've done it twice now, but there is something especially difficult about delivering a dead baby. You know, you don't get that rush of adrenaline of knowing that your baby is going to be, you know, eyes open, crying, screaming, that you know that they're not coming home. So we started upright first. I had the playlist going, and Brody was just holding me. He said, yeah, remember you said you wanted to be upright first to help yourself progress. And I said, yep. So I was standing upright. Brody was holding me up. I would cry, and then a contraction would hit, and I would use the gas for pain relief. As soon as the contraction had gone away, I'd go back to crying again. After about an hour, I got in the bath. And this labor moved very quickly. We didn't need to do any cervical checks while I was in labor because of how quickly it was going. So for the time frame, they told me at midday that she had no heartbeat. And then at 3:30, we broke my waters. And then by 5:15, my body started naturally bearing down, and I could feel that it was starting to push. So I got pretty excited about this. I thought, yep, this is going to be so quick. I didn't realize that pushing would be quite difficult because I was pushing for about an hour and a half with Alice, and I was expecting it to be a bit quicker this time. But yeah, Emma, she called my old midwife, Jodine. Jodine was still going to be there when I delivered. And yeah, she was obviously told what had happened with Violet, and came, which I was so grateful for. I hated the idea of having a stranger looking after me, and Emma had to go home because she'd helped another woman deliver earlier. So Jodine told me, look, usually when there's cases like this where the baby's dead, pushing is a bit harder because usually the baby's there working with your body, and Violet can't do that at the moment. So I remember after about an hour of pushing, I was just like, what the hell? Like, what's going on? Why is it taking so long? Am I doing something wrong? And Jodine said, no, you're doing everything right. You just need to keep pushing through. So I was in the bath for a lot of it. I tried a million different positions and nothing seemed to work. So I started resorting to, okay, if we can't get her out, like, what interventions, what are we going to do? And Jodine was just like, nope, you're going to get her out. You can do this. And I'm so glad that she had that faith in me. I'm so glad that she did, because I didn't at that point. Felt like my body just wanted to hang on to Violet, didn't want to let it go. So I decided to get out of the bath for a little bit. It was really difficult kneeling in there because it was quite sore on my knees. And Jodine suggested that I go and sit on the toilet for a little bit, because it'll give my legs a rest, but it'll also allow gravity to do its job. So I went to go sit on the toilet. Brody was standing in front of me, and I was just squeezing him with absolutely everything that I had. And I just had this full primal scream just rip from my body, like where every ounce of energy is going into getting this kid out. And then all of a sudden I started feeling the singing, and I was so excited. I thought, finally, we're getting to the end of this. I'm going to see what she looks like soon. And, I can just start. I don't know. I was just glad that childbirth was almost over. It felt 10 times harder knowing that she wasn't going to be coming home. So yeah, we started feeling the ring of fire, and I said, yep, she's starting to crown. I need to get back in the bath. So Jodine and another midwife had come in the room at that point, because they always have to have a backup just in case. And I walked so carefully because I was so nervous we were going to lose all that progress. She was just going to slip right back up. But I got back in the bath, and just started. I was like kneeling upright. So I was on my knees, but my body was upright, and I just started pushing some more. I remember Jodine saying, oh, yep, the chin's out. So I knew that her head was out, and I just needed to do one more push to get her out. And I did. And then, just that immediate relief, because when you're crowning and getting them out, there's so much pressure downstairs. So my body just immediately was like, oh my God, yes. And I just remember hearing her splash in the water. I scooped her up immediately and just started looking at her. And that's the thing that is most difficult about a stillbirth, is you've just delivered this baby, but the room is so quiet. There's no baby screaming. There's no massive influx of people rushing in to wipe down the baby and check their APGAR and, check on you. It's just really fucking quiet. So I just took the time to look at her. I was listening to, my music was still playing, and I was trying to pick what the song was that Violet was born to, and after about a minute of listening, I realised she had been born to Photograph by Ed Sheeran. So I was really happy. I love Ed Sheeran's music, you know, like I've listened to him for years, and his music's always helped me through really rough patches in my life. It's always resonated really deeply with me, so to have Violet be born to one of his songs felt really special. So yeah, Brody, yeah, they all helped me get out of the bath. I birthed the placenta like 10 minutes after on the toilet. Yeah, it was so quick because yeah, I couldn't birth it with Alice, but I was surprised how quick it came. And at that point I was like, she's separate of my body now, and it sucked. It sucked big time. So I was just on the bed just holding her, and then we cut the cord a little bit later. She was born at 6:43 p.m. At about 7:15, I called my family to let them know that she'd been born. We'd already decided that we wanted our immediate family to come and meet her, and that Alice needed to see her, for her to understand that I actually had a baby. So we called my parents first, and yeah, my mom was like, "Oh, we've literally just put Alice down." I was like, "Oh, look, it's fine." And she's like, "No, like I've just put it down. She's not even asleep. We can get her and come to the hospital right now if you want." And I was like, "Yes, please. Can you guys come?" So, and then Brody called his parents and told them that, yeah, he called them earlier to tell them that her heart had stopped beating, and they said they were going to be there within the hour. So my family got there first, and it's a complete opposite experience of what I was hoping for. You know, a new baby is supposed to be so exciting, especially one like Alice was my parents' only grandchild at the time. She's currently the only living one. So, you know, to have another baby in the family was so exciting, and this just sucked. My mum and my dad are just a mess because not only have they lost their grandchild, but they're at a loss for how to help me. And my brother and my sister-in-law both came, and my brother, who never cries, very rarely cries when someone dies, he had tears streaming. My dad, who never cries, had tears streaming. You know, I think Alice was the happiest person in that room. She came in and just, she was so excited to meet her. She wanted to kiss her little forehead and wanted to hold her, and kept talking about, you know, her hands and feet are so beautiful and she's so beautiful, Mum. So yeah. And then my in-laws got there a little bit later. My mother-in-law, my father-in-law, my brother-in-law, and my husband's grandmother. They all came to meet Violet. Yeah. We ended up spending 4 days in the hospital with Violet. And I'm so grateful for those 4 days, because we, you know, did our best to make her full of memories, because, I mean, you're never going to get a lifetime. But at least we can make the most out of those 4 days. And now here I am 5 months later, still trying to find ways to connect with her, find ways to still feel like I'm her mum. But I'm grateful for the age that we do live in now. There's so much support out there, and there's so much help for parents who have to navigate child loss, and so many things out there to help us feel connected to our children. So for example, I had this necklace previously made. I put in an order in late July. It takes a while to make. And in this necklace, we have locks of Violet's hair and some of my colostrum that I expressed before delivery in this necklace. And I got this literally a week ago. And it just helps me, it helps me feel like I'm physically connected with her. Because it's really hard when you've got an angel baby to feel that physical connection with them. I'm really hoping that this story, it helps other women that are walking this journey and that they don't feel alone. You're not alone, and it sucks joining this club, but I've never met more supportive women in my life. Anyway, thanks for listening.